Today's podcast, car version, I wanted to talk about standardization, like what is like the process of standardization in the form of like laws in a country. How does it affect?
Standardization a bit comes from industrial production models. So to like if you are a brand and you want to give a certain quality standard, you make sure that all your outputs follow the same standard. More or less, the Coca-Cola that you drink in Napoli should be the same that you drink in Rome, and possibly the same that you drink in New Delhi. So it's a brand, it's a standard quality, and you ensure through the production process that you have that standard quality. Now, this concept has been extended also to a number of other arts, I would say, that normally the quality standard was the creator. For instance, let's go in pure art, like fine arts, like painting. How can you ensure a quality standard in the paint? You cannot really do. Even if you are a good painter, doesn't really come out with all good production. Many writers of very good book have written also very ugly books, and not very ugly. I mean, maybe decent, but surely they would not be famous for those other books that they have written. So because it's creative art, and it's always a challenge to get out the quality, but it's creative, it's new. You cannot make it standard. You cannot make, because standard is a perfect copy.
Right.
Now, but so this is from Coca-Cola to the painter. It's quite clear that it's difficult to standardize the art of the painting, and then it's, let's say, relatively easy to standardize the production of a chemical drink, like it is the Coca-Cola. Now, between these two extremes, there are various kind of arts, various kind of expressions, which stand somehow in the middle between the two. Suppose medicine. Huh? Now, medicine, of course, has a lot to do with creativity, because the doctor has to be intuitive, has to be has to understand the person and not only the disease. At the same time, testing has been standardized, so the same kind of machine should produce the same kind of output with the same kind of liquid that you put into the machine. So there is somehow less. I mean, before the eye of the doctor was the main, and still now perhaps, the main tool of analysis. But as we go more into the technological process, then we standardize the way of doing analysis, and we standardize the way of giving response to that analysis. So the computer normally would just tell you the count of blood cell and so on, but you can plan it already to formalize, say, oh, this is a good limit or this is a bad limit, and this set of bad limits show that probably are one of these possible disease. Now, we're not doing that because we still take the role of the doctor as very important, but still we have standard more and more about when the test tell like this, then find out like this, and the standard approach, which can be modified by the doctor case to case, is to give this kind of diagnosis and this kind of therapy. So we tend to go more and more in the standardization process. When my mother was a pharmacist, that time half of the production of the pharmacy was made by the pharmacist himself. So then there was a big need to be really one who knows medicine, who knows the chemicals, because you have to make the medicine. Now you just normally sell something with the brand. So in fact, you don't need all those studies to read the recipe of the doctor and find out the right medicine to sell. Still there is a system old that say no, should be a pharmacist because somehow people ask and people think. Still, but you could you could very well have systems that in some countries have that the doctors when make the recipe, then the medicine just that is ordered just go on home delivery without going to the pharmacy itself. So the processes are becoming more and more standardized. In a sense, it's good. Saves time, saves money. Now the problem is, as we lose importance of the creative of the subject, of the creation of the subject, especially at the ethical level, the more we would try to think, as we said before, that a set of standard rules would ensure certain kind of results. Suppose international cooperation, the field where I've been working for long. So there are standards, there are protocols that should ensure a certain compliance with a certain quality of response. There is an earthquake, okay. There is a standard response. You go there, you find out the damage of the building, you take some survey, and then in few days you say that we need this much of tents, this much of things, and that tents should have a standard structure, and then there is. So it's a way of organizing better the response because there are certain kind of standards that are learned through the time, through experience, that ensure as much as possible a quality service. It's a good thing. But then we go too much. We go because still emergency response has a lot to do with a relationship with the community, with a relationship maybe of the political entities which is there. Suppose now there is there has been recently an earthquake in Burma. Well, but that is a country with a civil war. So you don't really have standards how to deal in an earthquake response with the civil war going on.
Right.
Especially because you don't know how they will react. You don't know if you're able to make a peace treaty between the government and the rebels and the tribals and so on. If one is trying to use the disadvantage of the other to gain control, that's an essential element which cannot be really standardized.
You need creativity there.
You need creativity. And if you standardize, the people will expect the others to play with the standard, but still you're not sure that the other party is going to play it with the standards, no?
Right.
Because we are not under the same umbrella, we're not under the same kind of political entity.
Yeah.
So standards are a set of expectations. Doesn't mean that we play with the rules or we play with the standards, and so
like international law, so you had create standards. But then,
yes, international law is a example like that. If you don't have an international police, no, and if you don't have international judges which put the others to task, then what's the meaning of international law?
Right.
It's a wish list.
Has to,
It's a wish list,
arrested, but then
they don't care. No. And
so that's like a standard without even the people connected to that. Like it's just an entity.
we can put as a wish list, but you cannot put as a strict set of rules because you have really if you want really to make standards into laws, you need to have a kind of system that implements those laws and punish those who do not apply those laws.
So how standardization affects for let's say in Italy, how do you think standardization throughout the years has affected Italy, and what do you think is different maybe in other places in the world, and how is it better or worse?
Now I think there is a fundamental mistake and kind of ethical mistakes to link this quality standardization with ethical values. Especially nowadays, we have different kind of we have always been, always had different kind of ethical norms, and try to equalize ethics with rules and respect for the rules is something that takes out ethics of its spiritual value.
Trying to take out ethics from the rules. How do you do that?
Now,
How is
now,
standardization doing that?
now, so ethics. It depends what you mean by ethics. We've seen also before that society needs rules, and rules restrict the freedom of the person. But we freely decide to restrict our freedom in order to have other kind of advantages. You cannot make a set of rules forever. You cannot say that respecting rules is the all of ethics, because ethics is creative. Ethics is what creates rules for the others and for yourself. You make a set of rules for yourself also if you want to develop certain aspect of personality. And according to what you achieve, what you know, you change the rules. But it's not that you do your set of rules for yourself and that's it. The rest of your life is just to go on with the rules that you set maybe 20 years ago. Don't do that. As your awareness grows, as your experience grows, or decays, maybe you are improving or you're ruining yourself in the process, you're going to change the rules. No? And you're not just there to respect the old rules. So your ethical life is inputting, changing, implementing, but evaluating and re-elaborating the rules that you put for yourself. Now, this is all the more true if we have different set of persons, the one who set the rules and the one who applies them.
Okay.
Now, before there was more like kind of priest, no? Or say that God has put the rules and we interpret them. In the sense you can say, you can call them the rule of the nature because God is the creator of nature, and then respect the rules of nature that are the rules of God. Some rules of nature are more evident. Some rules of nature, when it goes into psychology, into soul, no, is maybe more complicated. But the idea is, but there is a lot of interpretation. The nature has a lot of rules, but you have to understand, interpret, and all the more when it's something more philosophical, more ethical. So you don't standardize all the rules, all the things, and something may be very much related to a certain time, to a certain geographical environment. The Bible is still an ethical book for a lot of aspects, huh? But you don't go. There are a lot of rules about what woman can do and what woman can not do during menstruation. They are not going to be the parts which are more taught to the children in religion today. And no, so you cannot say that living. You cannot just say that to be a good Christian is to respect all the rules that are written in the Bible. Should be the spirit of the rules. So ethical life has to do a lot more than just respecting the rules. But if the rules are made by someone different from the one who implements them, that not necessarily really the implementation of the rule is an ethical behavior. In many cases, for instance, all the progress that were done through the revolution, through the changes, are challenging the rules. Many of the heroes we study as the one who made the history and created what now are our ethical rules are the one who challenged the rules of before. Right. So in many cases, challenge the rules is the right ethical choice.
Right.
So there is a dialogue between rules and ethical life, right, but it's not corresponding strictly. Every time one sets the rules, it's tried to say these are objective rules. We are scientists of the rules. Of course, they are traditional rules. They are learned from the past. It's something that they are gained through knowledge and through understanding. But objective, objective, that means not something that the expert of the rule should set for everybody. Not even the Islamic laws, that the expert of the Quran would say that these are objective rules. So this is our best understanding of nature and our revelation of God. But they are going to be constantly challenged by other scholars or not scholars. Say, no, these rules do not apply anymore nowadays because whatever. So, but as in modern times, we go less into this value of subjectivity. We go less into the value of creativity. We tend to have much more an attempt to a standard rules which apply to everybody, created by professionals and legiferated by parliaments. Now implement them, and if you don't implement it, I'll punish you. Again, from some aspect, may be good. You cannot invent a new kind of medicines just out of fantasy and maybe kill people. No, you have to respect it to follow some certain kind of limits. But too many rules create a lot of problems because they are standard rules, so they are meant to be applied wherever. I told you, Coca-Cola should be the same. The product should be the same. But the rules how to make a restaurant on the highway and like in Sant'Agata in a small mountain village, and the salary of the people who work should be the same.
Yeah.
Well, that's a bit complicated, no? Because as we are experimenting, that context of being in the countryside, on the hill area, where with a lot of historical value, with a lot of beauty, with a lot of history, doesn't have the same number of people who pass every day like in the highway. So how to respect the same kind of rule, which is mainly taught for employees, right, who work on the highway, which should be there. Otherwise, they are already overexploited. But they would be even more overexploited. And the rules of a small countryside, where perhaps people would be very happy to work for half the salary of the highway, but working next home, working where half a day where the children go out to school. So why don't you enable them to do that? For many people, would be better to work half the salary in the same village where they live, then double the salary, having to drive every day 100 kilometers to reach the highway and work in a very sterile professional environment. Now they cannot do it. You cannot do that. You're forced to pay more or less the same. You're forced to have the same kind of cleaning standard. So this idea that standardization of rules ensure the quality, in many cases, is not true at all.
It just promotes bigger entities to survive and smaller entities to die out.
The small farming and the kind of personal relationship that the people has in a community. You see, you don't have the brand. You have the oil of Pepe, huh? Of that person who is known by everybody as the good producer of oil. The community has its own authority. Community has its own tradition. Community has its own system of verification. Of course, the oil of Pepe is much better than the approved standard of the chemical factory, which respect all the norms, because they cannot put all those norms in the factory, otherwise it would cost too much. But Pepe can do in his own environment, and he will do because he is also the one who is going to have that oil, and he likes to live in that place. He likes to live in that community. In any case, he has to sell it to that price because he has to sell to that community but you need to know that community to know that Pepe is selling the good oil. But probably if you have so if Pepe goes and tastes the oil, or the people around Pepe taste the oil in the approved standards of the chemical factory, you say, what is this? But also probably if the inspector of the health department will go and go to the canteen, to the tools that Pepe is using, he will put Pepe to jail, because it's not up to the kind of norms which have been put for the standard for the factory.
Right.
So this over standardization tend to produce a lot of disbalances. It tends to make everything up to that kind of standard. That probably means Coca-Cola kind of standard.
And also, like one thing that I feel is interesting to touch upon is like the amount of standardization and the rules, especially connected to standardization, are as if like the country, the inhabitants of that country need to be treated like children. You know, like um, you have to be protected completely by the government because you are stupid, because you are a child. You cannot, you know. So more advanced is the country, and more that it seems like they treat people like children. You know, like in America, you have the cups. This drink is hot. You know, the standardization has reached the point that you order a cappuccino, but you have to be told that it's hot. You know, it's or okay, somebody jumps from a bridge and decides to kill himself. We have to put like a huge barrier on the bridge, like children. You know that somebody else, even if he tries to jump, he can't because there's a barrier. Like
Yes.
as if you're a child that can fall. You know, and being treated as a child from in the country that you live, and you are a grown up and you're treated as a child, I think it mentally impacts us psychologically. Like if I'm in India, I need to think while I live my life. You know, if I have to cross the road, even in Italy, but if I have to, thank God, still Italy is not so standardized, at least in the living of the people. You need to think before you cross the road, otherwise somebody will just like hit you. That thinking before acting helps helps your brain. You know, if everything is so standardized and treats you as a kid, then psychologically you also feel like a kid.
That's one point. But for me, the worst thing is that then you're forced to treat others like kids. So if you want to, I mean, because if you want to do something that is different, you're not allowed, because the rules force you to treat the others like as children. And this idea of the some people who are the so-called professionals or the so-called experts setting the rules of everybody is contrary to the idea of freedom, to the idea of empowerment, to the idea of choice. For me, it's fine that say this product is up to the standard of approved behavior or something like this. You should say, and you should say that this is not. This is not. Okay, this is not. But let me do it. You cannot go into expectation that there is a quality standard to be produced by the educational system, because it will not happen. So you need, because the educational system is too much creative. It requires so much care. It requires so much attention. So you cannot have a society which produces perfect men. So you always have a society which produces imperfect men, and has to prepare the relationship between imperfect man and imperfect woman, that have to continue their process of education by enabling each other to become better. But you cannot expect a standard form of education producing a standard form of citizens that are ready according to the quality expectations of the culture that place. So same with a lot of kind of artistic creativity, with the creativity of all the arts.
Mm.
So you need to say these are standard rules, okay? They are following the standard rules, okay? But there are many things that should be enabled to be done outside of the standards. If we go and set the standard rules that or the standard condition that people should have, for instance, before making children, probably you will stop making children because that you would go. The house should be this big, the hygiene of the house should be this much, the relationship between father and mother should be of this sort. Uh, the minimum salary of both together should be at least this much. They should have gone both under a kind of psychological training and behavioral training that enables them to deal with the partners and to deal with the children. I don't know if anyone will pass
And all
the
of
standard.
this,
And if you don't do, and if you make children without having this kind of quality control check, you will be arrested.
and all of this examined by some third person who's
Which is probably one who doesn't make children. But the standard rules, which will punish you if you made the children without having those rules. And once you're punished, then the children will be taken over by the state. Well, if we do that, probably people will totally stop making children. No one will be in the condition. In fact, the children are done with people who are brave but a bit irresponsible. When you're really responsible, you don't make children. I would have never made you when I was a responsible man. I was a bit a youngster, young person, a bit idealistic, saying, okay, let me take the risk. But we didn't have money, we didn't have opportunity. Surely I was out of standard. I am when the girl will arrive, I become more responsible, which actually happened. But that's something very different from the standard. You have it, and if you don't have that kind of salary, if you're not sure of that kind of relationship, don't make children, and who will make it? Now, this is true for this is much more true for the children, which of course would require the maximum possible hygiene and legal and psychological condition, because they are most important things to be done. Now, if you overload too much the standard rules how to make children, who will make children? So, of course, I expect the standard rules to be put in place for the restaurant on the highway. No, of course, they expect the standard rules. I don't expect romantic atmosphere. I don't expect that the cook is the one known by the community of travelers. I expect the rules to be applied. But if we make a bar, cafe in Sant'Agata, a city built 3,000 years ago, okay, of course, 3,000 years, and with places for good wine. That good wine was invented 3,000 years ago, without the standard rules that now you have to apply in order to continue to producing wine, no? And but so you have the community feeling, you have the teams, you have the and people know you. You develop a personal relationship that puts you in that standard, in that situation. So it becomes a more kind of personal behavior. Then becomes possible. But if you're forced to follow all these kind of rules that are set for a different context, then, as it happened in most cases, you cannot have any more the small restaurant in the village. Then you close the restaurants, you close the life of the village, you close the community space, you leave it just something for photograph for tourists that see how nice it was before. But that nice thing that was before is not more possible, because legally speaking, you can only have the standard restaurant on the big road. You cannot have any more the community space in the villages.
I heard in Bari there is South Italy, there used to be these women who used to make pasta on the streets, like on their table, but for many years, and it became like a touristic attraction, and people would pass by and buy pasta from these ladies. And now they are shutting them down because they are not in the standard of the laws
A
or
lot
like.
of things are shutting down because they are not in a standard. A standard of quality standard doesn't include the aesthetics, the relationship, the art. It makes technical. It makes Coca-Cola style, and that's how we are closing down the variety of the personality, the characteristics. We are closing down the condition for the community life. We are closing down the condition for family life. We are closing down the condition for the love stories to express freely. And we would like just a society of companies, employees, managers, and move according to standards set by politicians, of which we don't have standards, because of course we cannot make standards of politics, because if we make standard of politics, we abolish that kind of freedom which is required for making politics.
Yeah, that's true. The other thing that I think standards is very dodgy on is like the ability to do something about your own problems. So in India, for example, if you don't have money, or you need to start but you don't have money, you can always put a small tea stall, like in Banaras. You put a tea stall, you start. If things go well, then you buy a little shop. If things go well, then you do things in standard. But first you start. But what happens here very often is that the standardization process is so difficult and so complex and so expensive that there isn't even the opportunity for a young person to do anything um, to make his life better. So the standards that are supposed to help somebody actually prevent them from.
It becomes an exclusion. If you don't have that standard, you are excluded. And the exclusion is a big harm. And the small tea shop would be the tea shop for the one who cannot afford more than that. Which here you cannot have it. You cannot have a place where you can sit, no, on a small chair and just enjoy some talk with other people in a cheap environment, because that is not up to the standard of the kind of chair that you should have, the space that you should have, and so people get excluded. They cannot sit and talk and have a tea with companions.
Uh, and the other thing I think it's interesting in this topic is also one is the standardization of, for example, job related, but also, for example, we had the house in Lucera, no, in Italy, in Umbria region of Italy, and the earthquake had happened when we were small, and it took like 20 years to rebuild those homes. And people themselves couldn't do anything. Like they were not
Right.
allowed. That okay, you have the trauma of getting your house, the place where you live, is broken now, and that's okay. It's a tragedy. It happens. Then you have a second tragedy, which is your incapacity or your unavailability, like your
Yes, to
to
take
do something.
community. Yeah,
Yeah.
in Colle, I don't know if you remember, the time I and your mama were working as consultant of a camping nearby.
Okay. No.
Camping of Rambotti. Huh?
Yeah.
So camping, which had space for tents and so on, and it was used as a camping for vacation.
Yeah.
It was used only in summer, but it was a functional camping. Well, so of course we wanted to make our refuge, our tent, in a camping next home. No, we couldn't do. We had to go in the standard camping that the state system would provide us in the next town. And we couldn't cook for ourselves. We had the kitchen there. We had the camping. We had the kitchen. We had even the roulotte where we could stay. No, we cannot do, because that is not the one that is put by the. So it was a kind of invasion. I suffered much more of this invasion or the experts of reconstruction than on the earthquake itself. If we were left alone, the community would have taken things of responsibility in their hand, solidarity, helping each other, living together, reconstructing the church with the community service. No, we were dispossessed of all this. At the end, the town has been rebuilt, but the community dialogue, the community dynamics has been totally destroyed. The community life, so they didn't rebuild the community structure. The community structure would have been reinforced by the community taking care of themselves, instead treating them as children by someone who followed the standards, dispossessed the community. And now we have again the village built, empty. Now they are buying it as a second house, people of Rome and so on. Something is starting again, thanks God. But the community life has been destroyed by this dispossession of responsibility by an imposing state which enforced a law which declared that area, including the camping, which was perfectly functional, as no-go zone because of the earthquake.
Yeah, yeah. And what is it that, like, first of all, the standardization? Why does it come? Why why did it become a necessity? And is it serving the purpose that it started coming into place for?
I think standardization is not a bad process. Forceful standardization with the same kind of standard without considering the specific requirement of different areas, different people, different countries, that's bad. I mean, if you put some standard and then you're free to follow it or not, it's good. I like the use of artificial intelligence when I'm writing projects. I get standard answers. Well, for me, it's very nice as a clue. But then I modify it according to what I need. Yeah. But if I get to the computer using the standards, I expect the computer to give me the standards. I don't expect the computer to recreate you. Otherwise, what's the use? I mean, the creation is something that I have to do. If I make a question to the artificial intelligence, I expect, please give me the standard. And that's very useful. I confront with the standard. I can decide to, but I must be allowed to change it. Depends if the project is done in Italy or in Cuba or in Iraq or in Afghanistan. I cannot use the same standard. I have to modify it. I not expect the computer, the artificial intelligence, to know the ethical expectation of the Taliban, no? Or the political aspiration of the Communist Party of Cuba. The maximum I expect is to know the kind of standardization which happens, let's say, in the West, which is okay, which is fine. But even the West has so much varieties, so many things, so many different kind of norms, so many different kind of expectations. So I get a standard answer, fine, useful, but then give me the possibility to personalize it, or customize it.
And the rest, which standardization cannot do, what should do? Like standardization has its purpose. Everything else, like how do we do it if not with standards? Like we want to protect tangible heritage, or we want to protect an intangible heritage, or we want to create a community. What is it that because we said that the modern age thinks that through standards we can protect, right? If it's not standards that help in protecting or in...
we should try to avoid that standards which are not inclusive. So you have to include the people at different standards, but still include them, not exclude them because they don't fulfill the standard. Like in the case of the children, we have to allow that people do it with some sort of irresponsibility, with some sort of no, and we cannot set this. If we say the important is the love of the children, you cannot put the love standard. Without that, you shouldn't get married. Yeah. No, because what really matters is that love, care, which is, of course, is by definition something which is out standard. But that's the most important thing. So you have a standard, yes, why not? But then you play creatively. You don't exclude the possibility of having children because you don't have that kind of standard expectation, standard salary that you are expected to have it if you want to have children. So, and then you should allow more people. I mean, what is important in the creation? If you say the chai shop or the Indian that is not going according to standard. Doesn't have legal kind of standard by written law, but surely you have the community standard. And if you don't
Somebody will go if they feel sick.
no, but they will throw him out. I mean, there is a kind of accepted behavior in that community, which is a plurality of standards. So you don't have a central government in New Delhi which sets the standard for everybody. No, you set the standard of the company that that does it in a certain way, but the community should have some freedom, some flexibility, especially what is inherited by the tradition, because they break the process, they kill the process. How many times a very good cheese or very good agriculture production has been forced out of the market just because some bureaucrats in Brussels decided that it's out of the standard. Something that maybe coming from the Etruscan times, what people have been enjoying for centuries, when maybe have been the base of the discovery of many things coming out of that, and then suddenly the last expert of Brussels, probably sponsored by the big cheese companies, which wants to impose the standard everybody to put the people out of the market, declared that process, it's out of standard. So you cannot do it anymore. You can do only the industrial process that actually is our process of the company which sponsors the politicians, which forces the standards upon everybody. This is not creation. This is destruction. Of course, by a politician who has not been elected according to standards because they are not the standards of politics.
I'm thinking of the next topic connected to this, but today is not coming automatically. So I need to think about it.
We could follow it up that, okay, what creates a community? Not because we say that community has its own standard, but you cannot have a standard that create community. You have community that creates standards. So what is the element which creates community? Which in a way is the word that you want to do, because you want to create a space of community building.
Right.
So we can go into that topic.
What creates community, and how we want to also safeguard the heritage of Santa and we want to work on sustainable tourism. All of this. What are we going to do?
And how the standard can help or can damage the protection of heritage?
Yeah, because this is also maybe to conclude this episode. I feel like in Italy, for example, the tangible heritage is given a lot of importance, but the intangible heritage in the process is killed, and nobody talks about it, and there is no condemnation of that. So if you want to, you're destroying the intangible heritage of the grandmothers making pasta on the streets, or you're destroying the intangible heritage of the town, the town life, because you take 20 years to rebuild a beautiful town but empty. And on the other hand, in India there is another process, but actually they're connected. If you don't take care of both, you lose both. In India, tangible heritage is not really taken care as much as it should, and because they think that it's enough that it's the intangible heritage is taken care of. The traditions are passed down, and buildings are not important. So, but actually, destroying the old buildings is also destroying the cultural heritage.